Brian, we are all set on this end of things for whenever it's time to start.
Awesome. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thanks. No problem.
Hey, Megan, I'm getting a message that I can't start my video, which I'm guessing others are probably going to get.
All right, let me just take a peek here. Hang on just a second, Brian.
Okay.
All right, try it now and see if that fixed it.
It did. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Did I just beat you to the punch, Amber?
Today has been a technologically challenging day, but we're getting through it.
You are. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say, to everybody. I will call Budget Committee of the Whole for today, Wednesday, July 14th, to order. We continue to meet virtually. Probably familiar with the instructions on the screen for raising and lowering your hand if you're a participant in Zoom. You can do so as well by clicking more on an iPhone or Android phone. If you are on a landline, you can use *9 to raise and lower your hand. And as always, we have our City Council voicemail that goes to all council members, and email. The number is phone number is 552-6012, and the email is council@ci.missoula.mt.us. You can go ahead and take that down, Megan. Thanks. Our next item is roll, and if you wouldn't mind calling that, we have several people that are out today, and I'll let you know when you get to their names.
All right, will do. Okay. Just another technical issue here. Okay, there we go. We should be good now. Okay, excellent. So for roll, Stacy Anderson.
Present.
Mirta Becerra.
She's going to be a little late, but will join us eventually.
All right. John Contos.
He's going to be absent today.
Okay. Heather Harp.
Present.
Jordan Hess.
He's absent.
Gwen Jones.
Present.
Julie Merritt.
Present.
Jesse Ramos.
He indicated he'll be gone.
All right. Amber Sherrill.
Present. Excuse me, present.
Sandra Vasica.
She also said she'd be away.
Okay. Brian Von Losberg, you're
I'm
here. And Heidi West.
Present.
Right. All right. So we have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 members present today.
Great. Don't have any action items, but we do have a quorum, so we can go ahead and approve minutes from July 7th. Are there any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, those will stand approved. Is there any public comment on budget items not on the agenda today? Seeing none, we will move to our one budget item today. And Lee, I wanted to ask, did you have any introductory comments, directions, etc., before we get into fire?
I do not just, I guess just to remind folks that documents are uploaded to the website before meetings. If you go to the City of Missoula's website and navigate to the FY22 preliminary budget, just about an hour ago, we uploaded all of the documents for the fire department, and those are listed by date. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Lee. And yeah, this is the same process we've used in years past. I did have one request, maybe Megan and Lee, if you could look into where we have the listing for committee business on the agenda. I'm wondering if we can make that a hyperlink in eScribe so that if someone is looking at the BCAO document, they could click on that link and might take them over to the budget page that you just mentioned. So hopefully that made sense, but if we can do that, that would be great.
Sure,
Sure
I will
thing.
certainly check with Marty on it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Fire. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, good morning, afternoon, everyone. Really appreciate the opportunity to be before you and I guess kind of present struggle a little bit when Lee gets on, allows us to say how much time do you need, and certainly you guys have a lot to run through, but trying to bring you up to date or what we most of you do on your other lives, or you live and breathe everything you say. So if I were to skip over anything or you have any questions, please jump in. But that's why we try to keep our time minimal, but certainly don't want to undersell kind of what we're doing today. So
And Chief, I can hear you okay, but it's right on the edge. So I don't know if there's a way to either turn the mic up just a little bit. It's okay, but we wouldn't want it to drop anymore.
You bet. I will try to speak more clearly rather than with marbles in my mouth. So, all right, just let me know. So today we got Chief Davis, Brad Davis, and Chief Gordy Hughes, and we also, looks like off camera a bit, or that Brad ducks out, we got our fire services manager, Cheryl Schatz here. So we're going to kind of tag team you a little bit and as we walk through this. So again, thanks for the opportunity. As we came out with a pretty challenging year, our workforce is recovering. We are looking at, as we weren't able to train, we weren't able to do a lot of hands-on stuff. We found solutions to those as getting through this last year. But this year continues to be a recovery year, the ability to bring our training up to standards and where we need to be with those specific yearly trainings that we want to do for our technical support and other things. And then also, filling the gaps that we realized this last year in our system, not only in our response, but in our other divisions. So very proud of our team and what we accomplished. We had the large COVID experience this last year, which took our department of 95 to 100. We had 53 people in quarantine through about a 7-8 day period. So that was a bit challenging to come out of that, but our folks stepped up as they usually do and maintain our minimum staffing all the way through. We were able to stand up a new program. The mobile support team is everyone is aware, and just not only a mobile support team, but CIT program, and able to continue on. And I think that's turned into a very successful program where all entities are looking to expand that program. It's been a great asset to the community, and we're very proud to have that underneath our umbrella. So thank you for that. We're a big part of the vaccination team that went through the first part of the year, and in cooperation with the whole community, I think that was a great win as well. So even through extreme times, we're able to move the needle on things and be full on where you expect us to be, as first responders. So I'm really proud of that. Grateful that the city is reopening. It's been a breath of fresh air, good for everybody's mental aspects and capabilities. But we're really excited about having kids in the community back at our fire stations, putting on our CPR program, teaching our community that, and getting into, with our fire bureau, getting out more into businesses and being able to go through the inspections and those visits of making sure our community is safe And it's also meeting the challenges of our new growth in our community for the building permits and what's expected of fire to continue to do that. So wanted to just kind of start that out real quick and say thank you and appreciate your support through everything. And it was good to see everybody as we walk through with masks, through last year. And look forward to in person, because my Zoom meetings usually suck and I don't present very well through there. So what we're going to do is just start out, or what we'd like to do, just as we have in the last couple of years, just we're going to walk through our items request and give you a kind of a quick down and dirty, or what that is and what we're trying to accomplish this year for our request for our budgets. So
I'm going to try to share our screen and pull up our requests, and we'll just go through them real quick, one at a time.
And again, I'm just going to quickly remind folks, as I did before, if you want to follow along with these new requests, these are the documents that are posted under July 14th, 2021, under the FY 2022 preliminary budget. And there are links down in order through the various requests, including the CIP ones, just for the public.
Can you guys see that okay?
Is there a way, could you make it a little larger on the screen? That up by the percent, maybe make it, I don't know, 125% or something. Yeah, a little bit further over there.
can you move around? Oh, there we go.
That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
So, okay. So if you see us, just to let you know, we've got two large screen TVs behind the monitor where the camera is. So if we're looking up and over, that's why we're doing that. Plus, as I can't see very well, that bigger screen is helpful. So first item, again, we're going to tag team this. I've got a couple items that we're going to let Brad speak to, and what we're basically doing is, you could call it subject matter expert. And as Brad and Gordy take on their programs, more responsibilities each year, so we're going to let them talk to that. So we'll kind of roll through here. So the first one is so this is all hazards fund. So as we talk about this, the revenue account that we established, we continue to utilize that revenue account. And what we're doing here is just asking, basically it's a permission for spending authority. And so rather than, as we've done years in the past, have to come to you to ask for that budget authority, we run through all our revenues that the city, that we run through the fire department goes through this account. And it's an in and out account, so it's neutral. And we only cover what we're budgeting for, what we're spending and what comes in, and it's a cost neutral account. And so we're just asking for that to be moved to that 2.5 million in that account. And again, it's an in and an out. It's not something that we're spending extra on.
And for my colleagues, if anyone has questions, I'm just going to take questions as we go through each one of the links and items. So if you've got a question, queue up.
Okay, yep, next one. So the next one was this was our number one priority. And the next 13 that we'll see here is based on that. So this was our baseline adjustment. And last year, council did not approve anyone's baseline adjustment. And so the large part of that is our contractual obligations in our CDAs, and then it runs into our utilities, as you can see through there. The largest concern that we have is that has only been funded 50%, or roughly half. Of the 55,000 that was requested, 47,000 of that is due to contractual obligations that we signed off on in our CBA. And I guess this is my first, as this is our first priority, this is our first ask from you, is to adjust that, and I would really appreciate that to be fully funded. Funding half of that does help, which it brings us to, since we didn't have a baseline adjustment last year and half this year, it still puts us a year behind. And going into, as we're looking at those, a tax increase at the end of the year and that sort of thing, we just really believe that we should take the step to get us to a baseline coming into this next year and set us up for success, not only this year, but for the following years ahead, which I think we all agree that they can be pretty tough in the next couple of years, even with all the relief that we see. So,
Thanks, Chief. Let me pause for a minute. Question for Dale. If you can join, Dale. Is this the administration's recommendation on the half unfunded, funded? And a question about last year, Chief mentioned that we didn't approve a baseline adjustment. Was the administration's budget presented to council recommending one? I don't recall that it did.
So last year, in the midst of the pandemic, we did our best to hold the line on expenses, to avoid tax increase. In fact, if you recall, last year we actually decreased our tax revenues a little bit. This year, we acknowledge that we need to do that, but we are still working against the structural imbalance. And so what we did, and we treated the fire department similarly to other departments. We did, finance did a look at a 3-year history of the operation expenses and looked at the expected, the savings that had occurred and felt that if we use, based on that history, we could actually that departments could cover a lot of the baseline. However, that is also assuming that, but our department heads are very good at managing their budget. So they're not going to overspend, they're going to underspend, and what it's going to amount to, they're not going to do things that they would normally do, right? So that there's definitely that acknowledgement there that it is certainly not ideal, but trying to manage with what we have the best we can.
Got it. And I'm just trying to get back in the swing of the way we do this from a presentation standpoint, and then when we get the taxable revenues, our values and the revenue to the city in August. But did I get that right? That right now, the proposal from the administration is half of the request of the department?
That's correct.
Okay, got it. Thanks for that. And thanks, Chief. I just want to make sure between the department request and the administration's proposal that council understands the ask.
You bet. Yeah, no, I appreciate that extra clarity and support, and the support and the communication that we've had with Dale and his staff has been great. And appreciate obviously just this time to lobby, if you will, that just from a request of 55,000 and that just filling that gap, that would be extra helpful to us. And that relates directly to, for our stuff in the baseline, is a huge part of our overtime hours and how we're doing business. And we set up that what we were very successful, I believe, with our departments that have always playing catch up, is that 3 years ago we established that with our contractual obligations, and as firefighters get a wage, that increase, if we have a certain set of training hours with a composite of what those hours cost. And as quite frankly, as firefighters get raised, those hours shrink. And so it's our ability to be able to continue to put on those training hours that is necessary to keep up with, as we have firefighters sometimes come in or teach and instruct on their outside hours because of the operations day to day. So anyways, I'd love to talk more about that, but I appreciate the time. And so happy to answer any questions on that. If not, we'll move on to the next. So our officer development program, this is our mid-level supervisors, which is our battalion chiefs and captains in that realm, to be able to, as we hold accountability and we're able to put into our CVAs the accountability of those folks, making sure they've got the tool time and training to make sure that when they're meeting those intermittent acting captains and acting battalion chiefs, and by the time that they test and promote into those positions, that they're ready and we utilize those funds, and that was funded. So, and part of that, the next thing are we on that third? So the Westfall is the Gallagher Westfall class. We bring this in every 2 to 3 years. And while it's not necessary every year, so we're not looking for that. It's a one-time offer instead of baseline adjustment every year. It is every 2 or 3 years is necessary as we take as we get everybody in the fire department through that. And so this is an outside person that comes in and that was funded as well. And it's part of that professional development. And we're going to switch. I'm going to let Brad chat about the next 4 items real quick, or as he moves through that. Sorry, I don't need to.
Nope.
Time.
All right.
Thank
So,
you.
so as we move down our list of priorities, we have a request in to fund additional overtime hours to staff our ARU. Just a reminder that ARU acronym stands for an alternate response unit. We have stood that down at the time being. Towards the end of June and the end of the fiscal year, we stopped staffing that on overtime, and we've taken that opportunity to wrap up, so to speak, our pilot program of staffing that during our peak hours on Friday and Saturdays, typically in that late morning to early evening time frame where we see our peak call volume. I will tell you that ARU was while that unit was staffed, and it was staffed with 2 firefighters in that alternate type unit, not a fire engine. It was in an ambulance that served as a multi-use apparatus to be able to respond to EMS calls, motor vehicle accidents, assist in structure fires. The list goes on and on. While that unit was staffed, we've seen significant, and it was taking our lower acuity calls in place of a fire engine. And while that unit was staffed, we've seen significant increases in our station reliability and the ability for our fire engines to remain in station and available to respond to more emergent calls within their district, which increased our station reliability up over into the 90 percentile and above, which is where we need to be. So very successful while that unit was staffed. The challenges that we ran into, especially towards the end of our COVID year, was the ability, we were able to staff it and maintain that staffing, but we were asking a lot of our guys working additional overtime shifts to try to cover that. So really what that program looks like as that ultimate response unit would really need full-time employees hired to staff that unit. And that would look like hiring 10 full-time firefighters to add that additional unit to our response capabilities and staff that 24/7. This fiscal year, we put in a request for 1,696 overtime hours. And what that would give us, if approved, would give us the ability to staff it for the whole fiscal year, only doing Friday and Saturday for 10-hour shifts each day. And that currently is not in the funded category. But I will say that continuing staffing that on overtime probably isn't the best long-term solution. That would be hiring full-time individuals to staff that on a regular schedule and work basis. So that's all I have on that.
Brad, could you hold on that one for a moment?
Yes.
Could you repeat what you said toward the end there about this request? It did certain hours? I think you said Friday, Saturday. I might have gotten that wrong, for certain hours. And if that is captured in the text, I'm just not fast enough to read it. But could you repeat that? And I'm wondering if we could maybe add that in here if it's not listed.
I don't believe it's specifically listed in here. What we were doing during that pilot program was taking a look at our call volume statistics and finding the days and hours of the day that we were the most busy. And we would staff that for 10 hours on Friday and Saturday, typically from, I believe, 10 to, yeah, for 10 hours. I believe it started at like 11 o'clock in the morning and ran till 10 o'clock at night, or 11 o'clock at night, excuse me. Whatever.
Okay, if there's a way to perhaps edit the description to add that detail, I'd be interested in that, and I think colleagues would. I think it goes to, what do these hours as requested, and I recognize currently they're in the unfunded. What would they get? And if there is also a way, while I'm on this, to I'm guessing there's a relationship that if it wasn't the full amount, it would provide some level of coverage, but not the full that you described. So any kind of clarification about what partial funding gets, I think would also be an interesting piece of data to know.
Absolutely, and I am looking at, we're gathering that data from the pilot program along with our mobile support team, which I will segue into that, to bring that in front of public safety and health and present to the data and hours and staffing to that committee.
Thanks.
With that, I will just move on to the next request, which is our mobile support team program. We have, as we continue to develop that program, as we knew it would, it's growing and expanding faster than I anticipated. But as we knew it would, the more we get involved and the more calls we respond to and the more we work with all these agencies, the more demand they're going to see. This particular request is requesting $525,034, which would fund that program for 1 year. And that would be a dollar amount that would maintain the current level of service that unit provides, which is providing one mobile support van with a clinician and an EMT on it 7 days a week for 10 hours a day. And that is listed in here. And that coverage currently is from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then we have the ability to overlap on a day if nobody was on vacation or off sick that day. But what this ask would give us is that minimum staffing of having one unit in service 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. As we continue to see an increase in demand for that, I do feel that program is going to have to expand. We've had requests from city council members, county commissioners, and almost every agency that we've worked with. They want that unit in service more than this 10 hours. They want it from 8 in the morning till midnight at a minimum, because they have those calls come in that they need that resource and it's just not available at this time. So I will be working on basically an expanded program to present to you guys of what that may look like and the cost associated with that. And bearing in mind, as we look at expanding that program, that's not something that can just happen overnight. We've struggled through this pilot program in COVID. If you guys were to double that budget and give that to me today, it would still take time to get people hired and recruited and trained and staffed and equipment and office needs and all the things that would come along with building that program. So we were very successful on the 10-month program of laying that foundation and that groundwork and getting this unit up and running. It's been an absolute success story and a pleasure and broadening our horizons here at the fire department and offering that fourth response that we need in our community. So this particular ask is the $525,000 that would be, as you see down here, would be a split between a 60-40 split between the city and county ARPA funds. And we have $230,000 coming in this fiscal year through grant money and donations. So Providence is pledging $100,000 to Partnership Health Center for this program, and we were successful in getting $130,000 through the county tribal matching grant to support this program for another year. And so that would be the cost sharing outlined here to get the full ask of $525,000.
Great. Unsurprisingly, we've got a couple questions here. I really appreciate all your work and effort and success and the team's success on this, AC Davis. Stacy.
Yeah, absolutely echo that, President von Lossberg, for all this great work. And you sort of touched on it at the very end, but wanted to highlight and clarify the tribal matching grant is how kind of we were able to spin up this program. We obviously so that was in 2020 that we got that grant for this fiscal year that just ended. And then we in the budgeting process last year added additional funds. But it sounds like the grant you were able to reapply for and received it, or was it a multi-year grant to begin with?
Nope, you are correct, Stacy. It was a 1-year grant. It was for that pilot program. We reapplied and were successful again in getting another chunk of money from the county tribal matching for this coming year. It didn't roll anything over, and it was not a multi-year grant.
May I have a follow-up?
Yes.
The grant do you know what the grant fund was in 2020 compared to what is it the same amount here in 21 for 2022? And is this a grant pool that we are able to continue to go yearly and apply for? Because I'm mindful that the ARPA funds are not permanent and they're one time. So kind of as we look towards the future, as we want to continue this program.
Oh, great question. And we will continue to apply for grants, not only through County Federal Matching Grant, but other grant opportunities as we can. And we will apply again next year. As far as the same as last year was interesting. There was several funding sources that went into a pot of money that made that pilot program, and it was like $400 and some thousand dollars was available through multiple. County Tribal Matching Grant was part of that, county contributions, city contributions. There was another grant that also contributed to that, and then it went out to RFP for people to provide this service and access that $400 and some thousand dollars, which we were successful in getting that in partnership with Partnership Health Center and Missoula Fire Department providing that service. So it's different. So it's not like a set amount that we have applied for and got each year. And the $130,000 we got this year will apply again for money next year through any grant opportunity we can, and then using ARPA money. But I do, I think, Stacy, your question leads to that at some point, it's difficult running a program relying, with 1 year funding and maybe getting grant money and maybe not from year to year. So we will have to look at trying to find a more permanent funding source for this program as we continue to move forward, and obviously utilize federal dollars and state dollars and grant money to the best we can moving forward.
Great, thanks so much.
Amber.
Yeah, thanks. And I first want to acknowledge that I think that, you guys have done an incredible job this year dealing with having staff out for COVID and trying to keep everything running and get this program up and running. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the hard work, and please send that thanks to the whole department. So, looking at this program, and I understand that you can't get it up and running tomorrow, even if we fully fund it. And you said you were going to be bringing some other proposal, and I kind of missed that because, I just wouldn't want us, if we have the need for it now, and I realize it takes some time, I don't want us sitting here next year still, underfunding something that is a valuable resource for our community. So will you just speak to kind of the timing of that and how that would work a bit more?
Absolutely. And the timing, I apologize that like we said, building this program from the ground up, as I put this proposal together that's in front of you about a month ago, 3 to 4 weeks ago, we've already outgrown kind of what we've done. And so what we really need is double that to provide 2 vans and provide that level of service from 8 a.m. till midnight. So that's what that would look like. I'm working on putting those numbers together, but I know the rough draft that I have sketched out is at $900 and some thousand dollars and change for this program to run that expanded level of service hours and increase our staffing to where we can cover for that second unit. And then as we expand that program to meet the needs of the community, comes the challenge of trying to find space for response to vans and the personnel and office space and et cetera. So partnership and us are working on that, and we'll probably try to get that out to you guys as soon as we can. So I don't know, hopefully I answered your question, Amber, on that. And like I said, even if we fund the 525 fully, that program is already up and running. So that is not going to be a problem. It would be if we want to, as we expand and add to that, it would cost an additional, and it would take more time. But if you were to fully fund the 525, that would be a seamless transition. We'll keep doing what we're doing now and just move the program forward into this next fiscal year with no hiccup.
Okay, thanks. No, that does answer it. I just want to make sure we're not underfunding something that we need in the next year.
Julie.
Thanks, and thanks, Assistant Chief Davis. This question is probably easier asked than answered, as many are. On the budget sheet here at the bottom, it talks about what data will be used to report results. And and I know sometimes it might be hard with this mobile support team to put hard numbers to the money that we're saving by having this team in place, but I'm wondering if we can anticipate some analysis about that cost savings that we actually are having, because I think that's an important aspect when we're seeing this ask for $525,000. I my gut feeling is that we're also saving an amount of money that I think would be important for folks to understand.
Great question, Julie. And obviously, like, as I said, we're gathering that data now. We have to report due to the grant requirements. We have to report back to the state of what we've done in that pilot program, and then we'll bring that in front of you as well. Even the hard data is hard to capture, the jail diversions, because it's how do you have to assume that they would have went to jail when they didn't, and that can take different courses as that goes in the emergency department. John Petroff, our program manager, has a great list of data so far on how many jail diversions and hours on scene and emergency department diversions and things like that. The big and then as we roll into CIT, that bigger picture with the resources and like the ER and the mental health facilities and the crisis facilities, there's money saved on the back end with insurance and for the hospitals and like a big umbrella of savings that way. As far as the city, like immediate savings that we realized in that pilot program is the amount of hours that we have saved fire and EMS and law enforcement officers of having to be tied up on these calls that are behavioral health in nature and crisis calls. And so instead of having, which happen weekly, even daily, instead of having one of our police officers taking an individual in handcuffs in the back of their car to the emergency department and sitting in the triage area of the emergency department for 1 to 3 hours while they're waiting for an evaluation, this unit is able to take that load off of them. So as we staff our police department and look at staffing, that's the big save that the city realizes immediately, is instead of tying up police officers for hours on end for these types of behavioral health calls, these vans, one, they're appropriately trained and certified to deal with behavioral health crisis, and two, they are able to spend the time on these individual calls, whether that be helping with resources, doing the diversions, doing the warm handoff, that fire and PD just don't have the time or personnel to commit to these. So that's going to be the big saving for the city, is saving us on our manpower and personnel being tied up on these long duration scenes. That's really what they need. Where forever, in our history, we try to manage the situation to the best of our ability, within 5 to 15 minutes, get them in an ambulance and get us back in service, where this unit can come in and spend 45 minutes with that same individual and get them the proper care and resources that they need.
Thanks. And I'm going to jump in, being mindful of time, which is in short order. We need to move on.
Thanks, Brian. And then I'll just touch real quick. So moving on to our next, our CIT program manager, Teresa Williams, is currently in this role. And this is a request to fund that position for the cost of $96,829. It's currently in the executive budget, is approved, and ARPA being the funding source. And so that is, they're linked, they're different. We get a lot of questions on, or confusion, CIT, MST, they're the same thing. They are definitely linked at the hip. MST is that response. CIT is that bigger picture, making sure, as I look at it, as we're providing that fourth response, that behavioral health response, in addition to fire, EMS, and law enforcement response, we found a gap in the response world that we needed to fill. We have filled that with the MST. Now we need to start working on all the gaps in that bigger system of our ERs, our mental health facilities, our crisis facilities, no long door facilities, jails, things of that nature. And that's where CIT and Teresa comes in and helps fill all of those bigger system gaps, and also providing the CIT training to our law enforcement officers, our fire and EMS personnel, our jail staff, and then our clinicians, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a kind of hand in hand, but they are different programs. And CIT needs mobile crisis response, and crisis response needs a bigger resource umbrella to have a appropriate place to refer these patients and to transport these patients in lieu of jail or the emergency department.
Yep, certainly complimentary, and glad to see that recommended funding in the administration budget.
And then just a quick side note, as we talked about time, this would fund that position in its entirety, that one FTE. And we were successful in getting some CIT funding through County Tribal Matching Grant. And at this time, our plan is to use that that County Tribal Matching Grant funding to help supplement Teresa in her endeavor, as she is one individual trying to take on this huge resource need. She needs some help. So we do have some additional funding coming from County Tribal Matching to help our CIT program with whether that's an additional half-time FTE or just some other system needs that she may need to help meet her goal.
Great.
And then that's the end of mine, and I'll turn this back over to Gordy for our PPE request.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody hear me okay?
We can. Thanks, Corey.
All right, great, thanks. So with the COVID this last year, there was a definite need for look at our PPE and how we kind of progressed from just regular gloves to face masks to shields to gowns to coveralls, and ultimately running the gamut of all things PPE. So we recognized that if we had soiled or contaminated our structure gear, we had nothing left in our arsenal should we get called out for a structure fire or something like that. It doesn't make sense to have to launder and wait several hours before those garments were readily available again. So we put in a request, which was ARPA funded, for a second set of turnout gear, which is going to serve twofold for the contamination aspect, and also going forward with the Lavender report and the firefighter cancer exposure. So having two sets of firefighting structural gear is going to be a great asset to our folks, and the ability to swap gear while they're laundering and waiting for that stuff to clean. Any questions on that?
Nope, I think we can go on.
Next. So we were really challenged, as Chief Brandt mentioned, with our training. And since we couldn't train as multiple companies with the COVID, we had to hold in-house and just smaller training at the individual engine level. So that would be our 3-man engine companies within the firehouses that they reside. And also the ability to not be out of position with our training. If we all got together at Station 4, we'd be holed within the city. So we came up with ask of increasing the skills equipment that we needed for EMS. So mannequins and those tools that we could utilize to remain within the station house and at that smaller company level, still get our boxes checked with the training needs to maintain our EMS certification. Any questions on that?
No, but I'll just note for my colleagues, I'm sure they're following on these, the funding designation down. Several of these ARPA funding is a key component or the component. So please be both public and colleagues, good to note that differentiation of funding sources.
I should include on that within the ask of that would also include masks and another set of coveralls and some other minor PPE. Something that didn't get funded, which I probably didn't do a good enough job of tying this to a potential ARPA, which would be our video conferencing. Again, the ability to remain within the station and broadcast over the broader range and spectrum of our stations. We were looking to expand the system at our Station 4, which is our premier training facility. It has kind of a half system within that building. I know you've probably all been within our training room, and our televisions and projection screens and cameras only are one-sided in that entire training room. So we wanted to utilize the full size of the room and extend that video conferencing system to the uncovered side, if you will. So that went unfunded. The other ask under my portion was a training program that one of our firefighters has presented or brought to light. This is our second ask for this type of training. It is rapid intervention training, and it's specific to those individuals trained to go in to be the rescuers of the rescue, if you will. We maintain a cadre of individuals who would serve a function to go in if a mayday were called from our structured firefighters within a structure fire to rescue those individuals that may be trapped or out of the air or just in a predicament that they need some support. This type of training trains the trainer to bring it back to the masses certain skill set, thank you, Jeff, to provide for the rapid extrication role and the rescue of our personnel. With that, that would round out my portion of this presentation.
Thanks, Corey. And I technically, just as a note for folks, we're at our adjournment time. I'm going to keep us going. If people have to leave, I understand with prior commitments, we don't have any other committee meetings scheduled. So like to try and wrap it up as quickly as we can, but I'm just going to extend us. But if you have to leave, understood. Oh, and Stacy, sorry, I see your hand up.
No, that's no problem. I know you guys have just switched positions, and I'm guessing that the chief knows the answer to this. The Mayday request for training to send somebody to have them come back and then train the rest of the department, is that funded or?
That did not get funded. We asked for it last year. We're asking for it again this year. But it's a very efficient way to send one person out to go get training outside of our world, right out into the other place where in the United States where they're experts, and then they bring that back and then they train our other rescue team and eventually all ops training. So they train all 80 of us. So we send one guy out, they come back and train the other 90 folks of that. So.
Great, thanks for that.
You bet. And let's roll to the maintenance and training. So as we thank you that we increased it was 2 years ago we increased our maintenance division with a third mechanic. This request was for that mechanic and the other mechanics to get out and do the training and travel. That those folks have to take 15 to 30 tests within like 3 or 4 years and be recertified. And this request was for them to go out and receive that training. That's for $3,000. That did not get funded. Our next one, the health and wellness coordinator, certainly, again, thank you very much for this is John Petroff. He was stood up to help manage the great work that Chief Davis did, but to tie him directly to supervision, boots on the grounds for that MSD, help with the CIT. We have continued to load a bunch of our crap onto him. with other duties for the peer support, peer fitness, taking over department physicals. But this request is for John or whoever that is in that position to be able to go out and get training to maintain his certifications, and that's what and keep his stuff up so he can manage those folks within our department. That did not get funded. And then the last was a First Watch mobile dispatch. We believe this did come up under and was qualified for the ARPA, but as I did not get funded underneath that, we'll take another look at that. There's been another department, Missouri Rural, looking at bringing this into, so we're maybe collaboratively maybe looking at that, some share costs, and then we'll also be looking at another program that our New World does. So, we will adjust for that. We can roll through, roll through the CIPs. So real quick, Station 6. So, we're looking at, we've had this as somewhat of a placeholder, but this is coming to reality as we look out at our Mullen Build area. Certainly looking at that geographical challenge that we have and our response times and how many people we can get, how many firefighters we can get on scene and how much equipment can we get on scene to meet the needs so we don't completely burn down a building every time it catches on fire. So as we've looked out for the Station 6, we've identified a parcel out there. We are talking cooperatively with the water company to share maybe a space out there, and looking and talking a little bit with parks, as there's been kind of a 5-acre chunk identified, which is the intersection of George Elmer and England as they come in that northwest corner. And so that's been identified in the planning, and we've had good communication with folks. We have not solidified that purchase yet, as that's not been open to the ability to buy that property yet, but certainly in good communication with Dale. This relates and looks really good in our time response units in our areas of green, yellow, red, where we're failing at those outer areas, and where we can take those opportunities, especially as we're growing out. And there's so much work going on with the city and county to develop that right. We're certainly in those conversations. So. What's next? Station 4 training room. Gordy, Chief Hughes is in on this, looking at some of the what's called the HVAC system for 4, but we're looking for kind of a funding, ARPA funding for that. While that station was built in 1994, some of those are stuff is out of date that we can't even replace. So that's the request for that CIP. Hope that makes sense, but running through things. And then Station 2 and 5, we've had issues with when it rains. It only leaks when it rains, kind of deal. But we're looking at this system not only externally but internally. And while in 2008 through 9, when those were built, Garden City builders are out of business, and we're looking to correct some of those mistakes that were made back in there instead of patching things. So that is to be determined, and we're working with the group to help clearly identify what the needs are at Station 2 and 5 as we're looking, not just a simple re-roof of a tear off and on, which that sticker price is very high. It's actually what's going on inside is that the buildings are sweating, the incorrect ventilation system was put in, it's not moving enough, so it's at times in certain conditions it's sweating inside and it looks like it's raining, but it's not raining outside. So we're making sure we have that dialed in to be responsible for what that looks like, so that we can fix that once. And, not keep it.
I have no idea what this so-called weather event that you call rain is.
Yeah, it fixes itself sometimes. Maintenance division expansion. This was identified in our facilities plan as we have 3 mechanics out there. I'll take you to today. We've got a ladder truck that's out of service. We've got a Type 6 that's being built, and we have a Type 1 that's out of service, and they currently operate out of 1 bay. So in our facilities expansion for facilities plan, the expansion of that maintenance division is to add an extra building, an extra bay onto that. We've already got the land at Station 4, and then expand the tool room that's there. So that's what this is, that request is for.
Last one.
And last one is, oh, the elevator. So we continually wrestled with the elevator here at Station 1, out of service, antiquated parts. And so that this is almost a docket and a placeholder for that elevator to get repaired. And we're in good communication with Dale about where those monies and how that can be funded. That
That's the last of them, right?
That's the last of them. So, yep, just to tie up things real quick, certainly we're looking at this FY22 budget year. I think we need to look forward, making sure we're successful this year, but it's steps. And we talked about a little bit about that ARU. We're looking about that efficiency and how we're responding and meeting our obligations as a community. But Chief Davis talked about those 10 folks to staff that ARU. We're talking about land and a new station built out that District 6 or land for Station 1. That Mullen Build area, that would look like 16 new firefighters to staff that when that tips up. Real quick, so as to date of this right now, as of 1st of July, our call volume is already up 16% for the year compared to last year. One really cool statistic that I thought is that a year and a half ago, we had 1/3 of the time, it was 32.6% of the time we had concurrent calls going on. That now with this last year and this year, that's jumped to 44% of the time. We have 2 calls going on. Remember, that's not just 2 engines going on. That can be a false alarm, which is 3 engines, a ladder truck and a battalion chief, or a car accident that now needs 2 engines. We don't have that. So 44% of the time we have 2 calls going on in the city at the same time. But again, we'll continue to focus on how most efficiently and effectively to respond to these calls and demands of our community. And I think that does come hand in hand with the MST, the CIT program, the ARU, and staffing those appropriately. And then making sure that we're supporting our other divisions in fire, where a lot of that is ops-centric. We can't forget about our maintenance division, our training division, and certainly our fire bureau that are out, in the weeds, but not in the light, shiny red fire trucks running around. So looking to, obviously, always looking to be successful. I appreciate your guys' support always.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody on the staff there in the room and everywhere else. So thank you. Dale, I see your video on. That usually means you have something important to say.
I had it really important. What I wanted to do was take a moment to comment on the administration's approach to the fire budget, and it kind of leads into what you'll see in other departmental budgets. But the lenses we created with our strategic plans and particularly the ARPA criteria really led to how these things were funded. So items such as MST and CIT, there's top priorities on our strategic plan were the first things that we look to fund. ARPA with the notion of being able to do things like be prepared for the next pandemic and the incentives that act provides us is where we're investing those dollars. And then, so it's not to say that those other items that fire and these other departments are going to ask for aren't important, but this is how we're using that strategic plan lens and that ARPA lens right now. What we intend to do, and we'll continue to do it. AC Davis talked about how as more funding opportunities come in, things are going to change. So there is the opportunity to expand CIT, for example, because of the tribal matching grant. And we'll look at all of these things, some of the things such as video conferencing and things that are actually one-time in nature. As we get a more clear picture of where we believe we're at, there'll be other opportunities and other sources. So I just wanted to put some of that context out there.
No, I appreciate that. Julie, sorry, hope I didn't miss you there.
No, really quickly, and I'm going to ask this as something for future budget meeting, is if Dale and Lee could just give us a refresher about how the CIP requests end up getting rolled into the budget. That's something that I always need a little bit of a refresher on, and maybe some of our newer council people will be around for hearing that, because that to me, that's always just something that's a little different than the regular budget requests. But we don't necessarily need to go into that now because I know we're already over time.
I'd just like to let folks know we are actually going to have CIP overview as an agenda item further down in the calendar. So we will make the time for it.
Yeah, and you were reading my mind. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, hopefully. CIP is a really important thing for us to touch base on. We will have specific time dedicated to it. We have seen items like Fire Station 6 on sort of the long range CIP for some time. And I was going to mention to folks, pay attention to funding sources in these documents. Look at like ARPA funding, tax funding, what is funded, what is proposed to not be funded in the administration's budgets. All of these things are dynamic. Really appreciate Dale's perspective on the lenses used. And we will move forward, but wanted to get back in the swing of things as we do budget again. Those are sort of key things, I think, for people to pay attention and make notes about and track over time before we finally get to an adoption. So anything else, or Dale, anything before adjourning? Okay. Thanks again, Fire. Thanks, everyone. That was our item for BCAL today, and we'll be adjourned.